Ahead of the 2020 NFL season, the Washington football team famously got rid of their long-standing team nickname and cleaned house. The organization completely gutted its front office, kicking to the curb a number of the suits who have been recently exposed for propagating a rather toxic culture. Now, we don't know what conversations were had behind the scenes, nor do we know exactly what the impetus of the move was, but perhaps the powers that be were hoping for a little bit of a PR or karma boost. Of course, there have been, and always will be a load of terrible teams in the NFL. But if you ask me, the Washington football team stands alone as the single worst run organization in the modern era. It has been bad enough, in fact, that the team might actually be cursed. So much so that it has even started to look like the entire city might be cursed. And the bad luck that has followed Washington has even begun to spread to the opposing teams that dare to step foot on the haunted grounds of FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland. The most recent incident took place during Week 11 of the 2020 NFL season, when the Cincinnati Bengals rolled into town with their prized quarterbacking prospect, the 2020 first overall pick in the draft, Joe Burrow. Burrow had been playing great football for a young, scrappy Bengals team that looked like it was starting to make some strides towards being a competitive organization again. In fact, he was on pace to become the first rookie in league history to have 6 300-yard passing games in his first 10 appearances, as well as break Andrew Luck's rookie passing yards record of 4,374 yards. But midway through the third quarter, with 203 yards and 1 touchdown already in the books, everything went terribly wrong, and the curse that Washington had earned with its seedy behavior over the past 20 years struck again. It's almost like the negative energy surrounding the Washington football team ran out of Washington players, coaches, and fans to interfere with after torturing them for so many years now and had to look somewhere else. The Bengals were backed up deep into their own territory, and on third down, Burrow dropped back and fired a pass down the sideline to Tyler Boyd. But as he delivered the pass, Washington defensive linemen Jonathan Allen and Montez Sweat hit Burrow from opposite sides. And the way they caught him caused an awkward bend in the knee, sending him crumbling to the ground with a nasty ACL injury. Listen, I understand that this is football and this is the NFL we're talking about, and Burrow was certainly not the first player to get injured, and sadly he won't be the last, but it sure seems like these sort of things happen in the nation's capital much more often than they do anywhere else. It seems disproportionate enough that I don't know if we can rule out the notion that the organizational dysfunction in Washington that has resulted in dealings that range from questionable to issues that are beyond discussion and completely disgraceful has put a curse on the entire city. When you think about some of the ugly storylines that seem to come out of Washington, D.C. every other week over the past few years, the notion that karma or a curse or whatever would be out to get whoever dare play football in the city doesn't really seem all that crazy. Obviously, there is the team's decade-long fight to keep a mascot and team nickname that loads of people found offensive. Regardless of whether or not you think they should have changed the name, there's no denying that the team could have handled the situation a little better. The team's owner, Dan Snyder, was indignant and condescending throughout the entire process. I mean, the guy utterly refused to participate in the slightest bit of discourse with the offended parties. The man was completely indignant. You know, until his sponsors finally stepped up and he started to feel it in his pockets. And then there are the awful stories that have come out about the way that Snyder and his cronies treated the organization's staff, especially the team's cheerleaders. Who could forget those greasy reports from the Washington Post that Snyder had one of his execs create a creepy DVD for him of behind-the-scenes shots from the team's swimsuit calendar shoot? Or the comments he allegedly made about managing their weight, like he's something to look at. All I'm saying is that it's no surprise that karma has caught up with Snyder and his franchise. Remember when they were all excited watching Robert Griffin III develop into a budding superstar during his Rookie of the Year winning 2012 campaign? There was all of this hype after the team traded a fortune for a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback with a 4.4 speed. And it looked like it was starting to come to fruition. Not only did he earn Rookie of the Year honors, but he even made it to the Pro Bowl that season. And what's more, he led lowly Washington to the playoffs. That right there says it all. Too bad it all came crashing down during the NFC wildcard game when RG3 blew out his knee. He would never be the same again. Alright, in fairness, that may have been incompetence from Washington rather than anything supernatural. At least according to the opposing coach from the game, Pete Carroll, who told ESPN Radio that Washington's inability to maintain and prepare its field resulted in a slew of injuries during that contest. It's a horrible field. It's as bad as a field can get for being dry. It's too bad. It really is. It's too bad. We deserve better. It was just worn out. There was a lot of slipping and all that kind of stuff. It's relative. It didn't change the game at all in my opinion because it's relative to both sides. We should just expect to see a better field at that time of year. Either way, another case of Washingtoning. There are countless examples over the years too. Ahead of the 2019 season, Washington traded Kendall Fuller and a third-round pick to the Chiefs for Pro Bowl quarterback Alex Smith. Once the trade was official, they inked him to a 4-year, $94 million extension, and Smith rewarded them, leading the team to a 6-3 record through his first 9 games in DC. But as always, disaster struck. Smith was leading Washington up against a solid Houston Texans side when he took a brutal sack at the hands of Kareem Jackson and J.J. Watt. The sack was so bad that it ended up causing spiral and compound fractures to both his tibia and his fibula in his right leg. The trouble for Smith didn't stop there either. Inside and out, his leg was destroyed, to the point that Washington's QB had to endure over 15 surgeries and 4 separate hospital stays over a 9-month period. It got so bad that his doctors got to the point that they were seriously considering amputation above the knee because his life was at risk from a bout of sepsis that had taken hold of his leg. They needed to pull out all the stops to avoid amputation. We're talking about drastic measures that thankfully worked. Smith got a skin graft and the doctors performed an aggressive operation to take some of the muscle from his left quadricep in an effort to ultimately save the leg. Although no one could have predicted the disaster that was waiting for Smith after he got carted off the field, everyone knew from the jump that it wasn't good. In fact, almost immediately, the announcers and fans on social media alike were comparing his injury to the infamous Joe Theismann injury. You know, the other former Washington quarterback who, like Smith, suffered a nasty leg break. And the strange part is that the injury took place exactly 33 years to the day of Smith's injury. Yeah, you heard that right. Theismann broke his leg in an eerily similar fashion to Smith on the exact same day of the year. Okay, I know Alex Smith ended up making it back onto the gridiron, but come on. That sounds more like a supernatural force at work than any sort of organizational incompetence. As for Theismann, he wasn't as lucky as Smith, as his injury forced him into an early retirement. The incident took place in November 18, 1985 during a Monday Night Football contest against the New York Giants. While attempting a flea flicker, the Washington quarterback was taken down by linebackers Lawrence Taylor and Harry Carson, snapping his leg in gruesome fashion. It's just pretty scary how many similarities Theismann's leg break shares with Alex Smith's. We already mentioned how they both occurred on the exact same day of the year, November 18th, but how about the fact that both of them happened in Washington near the 40-yard line and during a game that ended with a final score of 23-21. Both injuries were also fractures of the right tibia and fibula, and heck, Theismann was even at the game when Smith suffered his brutal leg injury. Now, if that doesn't scream curse, I don't know what does. In the end, there's really no telling exactly what's going on in Washington, D.C. that's causing all this madness to happen. Is it a coincidence, poor field conditions, or maybe somebody up there really does hate Dan Snyder and his franchise? You can choose whichever theory you like, but I'm sticking with the hypothesis that the Washington franchise and the stadium they play in is without a doubt cursed. Alright, what about you? Do you think the Washington football team is cursed? Join us in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.